Bagan Archaeological Zone. Bagan is an ancient city and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the Mandalay region of Myanmar. From the 9th to 13th centuries, the city was the capital of the Pagan Kingdom, the first kingdom that unified the regions that would later constitute Myanmar. During the kingdom's height between the 11th and 13th centuries, more than 10,000 Buddhist temples, pagodas and monasteries were constructed in the Bagan Plains alone, of which the remains of over 2,200 temples and pagodas survive. Bagan Empire, or spelt as Pagan, was the first Burmese kingdom to unify the regions that would later constitute modern-day Burma, Myanmar. Bagan's 250-year rule over the Irrawaddy Valley and its periphery laid the foundation for the ascent of Burmese language and culture, the spread of Burman ethnicity in Upper Burma, and the growth of Theravada Buddhism in Burma and in mainland Southeast Asia. The kingdom grew out of a small 9th-century settlement at Bagan, Pagan, by the Myanmar, who would become the Bamar or Burman ethnic group later. The Myanmar had recently entered the Irrawaddy Valley from the Kingdom of Nanzhao. Over the next 200 years, the small principality gradually grew to absorb its surrounding regions until the 1050s and 1060s, when King Irrawaddy founded the Bagan Empire, for the first time unifying under one polity the Irrawaddy Valley and its periphery. By the late 12th century, Irrawaddy's successors had extended their influence farther to the south into the Upper Malay Peninsula, to the east at least to the Salween River, in the farther north to below the current China border, and to the west, in northern Arakan and the Chin Hills. In the 12th and 13th centuries, Bagan, alongside the Khmer Empire, was one of two main empires in mainland Southeast Asia. The Burmese language and culture gradually became dominant in the Upper Irrawaddy Valley, eclipsing the Pyu, Mon and Pali norms by the late 12th century. Theravada Buddhism slowly began to spread to the village level, although Tantric, Mahayana, Brahmanic, and animist practices remained heavily entrenched at all social strata. Bagan's rulers built over 10,000 Buddhist temples in the Bagan capital zone, of which over 2,000 remain. The wealthy donated tax-free land to religious authorities. The kingdom went into decline in the mid-13th century as the continuous growth of tax-free religious wealth by the 1280s had severely affected the crown's ability to retain the loyalty of courtiers and military servicemen. This ushered in a vicious circle of internal disorders and external challenges by the Arakanese, Mons, Mongols, and Shans. Repeated Mongol invasions, 1277 to 1301, toppled the 4-century-old kingdom in 1287. The collapse was followed by 250 years of political fragmentation that lasted well into the 16th century. According to the Burmese chronicles, Bagan was founded in the 2nd century AD, and fortified in 849 AD by King Payanbia, 34th successor of the founder of early Bagan. Mainstream scholarship however holds that Bagan was founded in the mid to late 9th century by the Myanmar, Burmans, who had recently entered the Irrawaddy Valley from the Nanzhao Kingdom. It was among several competing Pyu city-states until the late 10th century, when the Burman settlement grew in authority and grandeur. From 1044 to 1287, Bagan was the capital as well as the political, economic and cultural nerve center of the Pagan Empire. Over the course of 250 years, Bagan's rulers and their wealthy subjects constructed over 10,000 religious monuments, approximately 1,000 stupas, 10,000 small temples and 3,000 monasteries, in an area of 104 square kilometers, 40 square miles, in the Bagan Plains. The prosperous city grew in size and grandeur, and became a cosmopolitan center for religious and secular studies, specializing in Pali scholarship and grammar and philosophical psychological, Abhidhamma, studies, as well as works in a variety of languages on prosody, phonology, grammar, astrology, alchemy, medicine, and legal studies. The city attracted monks and students from as far as India, Sri Lanka and the Khmer Empire. The culture of Bagan was dominated by religion. The religion of Bagan was fluid, syncretic and by later standards, unorthodox. It was largely a continuation of religious trends in the Pura where Theravada Buddhism coexisted with Mahayana Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, various Hindu, Saivite, and Vaishnava schools as well as native animist, Nat, traditions. While the royal patronage of Theravada Buddhism since the mid-11th century had enabled the Buddhist school to gradually gain primacy, other traditions continued to thrive throughout the pagan period to degrees later unseen. The Pagan Empire collapsed in 1287 due to repeated Mongol invasions, 1277 to 1301. Recent research shows that Mongol armies may not have reached Bagan itself, and that even if they did, the damage they inflicted was probably minimal. However, the damage had already been done. The city, once home to some 50,000 to 200,000 people, had been reduced to a small town, never to regain its preeminence. The city formally ceased to be the capital of Burma in December 1297 when the Bagan Kingdom became the new power in Upper Burma. 14th to 19th centuries. A hot air balloon flying over a pagoda in Bagan survived into the 15th century as a human settlement, and as a pilgrimage destination throughout the imperial period. A smaller number of new and impressive religious monuments still went up to the mid-15th century, but afterward, new temple constructions slowed to a trickle with fewer than 200 temples built between the 15th and 20th centuries. The old capital remained a pilgrimage destination, but pilgrimage was focused only on a score or so most prominent temples out of the thousands, such as the Ananda, the Shwesagan, the Silamani, the Tirumanlo, the Dhamma Yazika, and a few other temples along an ancient road. The rest, thousands of less famous, out-of-the-way temples, fell into disrepair, and most did not survive the test of time. For the few dozen temples that were regularly patronized, the continued patronage meant regular upkeep as well as architectural additions donated by the devotees. Many temples were repainted with new frescoes on top of their original pagan-era ones, or fitted with new Buddha statues. Then came a series of state-sponsored systematic renovations in the Konbaung period, 1752 to 1885, which by and large were not true to the original designs, some finished with a root-plastered surface, scratched without taste, art or result. The interiors of some temples were also whitewashed, such as the Thatpi Inu and the Ananda. Many painted inscriptions and even murals were added in this period. In 20th century, to present the original Bapaya seen here in 1868 was completely destroyed by the 1975 earthquake. A new gilded pagoda in the original shape has been rebuilt. Bagan, located in an active earthquake zone, had suffered from many earthquakes over the ages, with over 400 recorded earthquakes between 1904 and 1975. A major earthquake occurred on July 8, 1975, reaching 8 mm in Bagan and Mangkaba, and 7 mm in Nyongyu. The quake damaged many temples, in many cases, such as the Bapaya, severely and irreparably. Today, 2,229 temples and pagodas remain. Many of these damaged pagodas underwent restorations in the 1990s by the military government, which sought to make Bagan an international tourist destination. However, the restoration efforts instead drew widespread condemnation from art historians and preservationists worldwide. Critics are aghast that the restorations paid little attention to original architectural styles, and used modern materials, and that the government has also established a golf course, a paved highway, and built a 61 meters, 200 feet, watchtower. Although the government believed that the ancient capital's hundreds of, unrestored, temples and large corpus of stone inscriptions were more than sufficient to win the designation of UNESCO World Heritage Site, the city was not so designated until 2019, allegedly mainly on account of the restorations. Bagan today is a main tourist destination in the country's nascent tourism industry, which has long been the target of various boycott campaigns. Several Burmese publications note that the city's small tourism infrastructure will have to expand rapidly even to meet a modest pickup in tourism in the following years. On August 24, 2016, a major earthquake hit central Myanmar and again did major damage in Bagan. This time almost 400 temples were destroyed. The Salamani and Myau Guni, North Guni, were severely damaged. The Bagan Archaeological Department has started a survey and reconstruction effort with the help of UNESCO experts. Visitors are prohibited from entering 33 damaged temples. On July 6, 2019, Bagan was officially inscribed as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, after 24 years since the military government first nominated the city in 1995, during the 43rd session of the World Heritage Committee. This makes Bagan the second World Heritage Site in Myanmar, after the ancient cities of Pu. As part of the criteria for the inscription of Bagan, the government of Myanmar has pledged to relocate existing hotels in the archaeological zone to a dedicated hotel zone by 2028. Evidence shows that the actual pace of Burman migration into the Pu realm was gradual. Indeed, no firm indications have been found at Sri Kshetra or at any other Pu site to suggest a violent overthrow. Radiocarbon dating shows that human activity existed until circa 870 at Halin, the Pu city reportedly destroyed by an 832 Nanzhao raid. The region of Bagan received waves of Burman settlements in the mid to late 9th century, and perhaps well into the 10th century. The Manon states that Bagan was fortified in 849, or more accurately, 876 after the Manon dates are adjusted to King Irrawaddy's inscriptionally verified accession date of 1044. The chronicle reported date is likely the date of foundation, not fortification. Radiocarbon dating of Bagan's walls points to circa 980 at the earliest. If an earlier fortification did exist, it must have been constructed using less durable materials such as mud. Likewise, inscriptional evidence of the earliest Bagan kings points to 956. The earliest mention of Bagan in external sources occurs in Song Chinese records, which report that envoys from Bagan visited the Song capital Beijing in 1004. Cham and Mon inscriptions first mentioned Bagan in 1050 and 1093, respectively. By the mid-10th century, Burmans at Bagan had expanded irrigation-based cultivation while borrowing extensively from the pious predominantly Buddhist culture. Bagan's early iconography, architecture and scripts suggest little difference between early Burman and Pu cultural forms. Moreover, no sharp ethnic distinction between Burmans and linguistically linked pious seems to have existed. The city was one of several competing city-states until the late 10th century when it grew in authority and grandeur.